Welcome to the Bagel Logic Podcast, the show where Papa Thom spreads wisdom like a smear of cream cheese on an everything bagel. Here's your host, Thom Jennings.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bagel Logic Podcast. And today is a very special day. We actually have our very first, I don't know, do we call this a studio? What do we call it, John?
I would say this is a studio. There's instruments, and there are microphones and mixers and turntables.
All right, so in studio live, every interview I've done so far has been by Zoom, but let me give my friend John Ritz a quick introduction. And I'm trying to remember. I think John and I met because we were both working at concerts, photographing. At the time, I was mainly a writer, and then I shifted to photography, and then we both wrote for a music website called BackstageAccess.com, and that's AXXESS, in case anybody's interested. And then just got to know each other. If you listen back to one of the first episodes called How to Fail in Business, and that's probably one of the reasons that, it kind of surprised me, I have to admit. In fact, my episode yesterday, for people that listen to the archives, I did an episode where I say, it amazes me that I feel comfortable talking about certain people because I figure they'll never listen. Not that I said anything bad about you, but, it was interesting that I did mention him in our episode about the Coronia Media Group, which was a little kind of PR firm that we sort of threw together, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But I'm going to kind of catch up with him, and I guess we'll try as hard as we can, because I think sometimes when you get two friends in a room, they talk about stuff that they assume the rest of the world will know about. But obviously, you guys are going to be listening to this not knowing too much about us. But maybe a good starting point is we'll talk about, and there's a few topics that I want to hit on, but back that old Coronia Media Group days, and it's funny. I think as you listen back in the archives, I said the episode I had about how to fail in business, I think there was a lot of things about that experience that was kind of negative, but there were some positive things that I took away from it as well. I mean, when you think back to CMG in those days, I guess we'll start with, what are the regrets that you had back from then?
Well, I guess the biggest regret would be that it didn't pan out as we had hoped it would. As far as the people we dealt with and the events that we tried to corral and promote and bring something positive back to the area, we were focusing on the concert series in Lockport, and I think that would have been good for everybody, because as you know, when that left, Lockport's Lockport on a Friday night. I mean, there was a lot there that's gone. But as far as from a business standpoint, I don't have any regrets. I don't look at things as a regret. I fail forward is my motto. Is every business experience, and I've had several fail, is you just continue forward. You learn, then you move on. You never lose.
Yeah, and I think that, just for people that aren't from the area, Lockport, New York, it's a small town near Buffalo, and they had a free concert series. I think I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday nights.
It was Friday nights.
So it was Friday nights, and I mean, major acts, kind of heritage rock and roll acts, REO Speedwagon. They had like a version of The Doors, post Jim Morrison's death, obviously. Grand Funk Railroad, some Canadian acts like Our Lady Peace. But, it was a series that I think meant a lot to us as music lovers, and it meant a lot to the community because, again, Lockport's a small city in western New York, and but ultimately this series just it was a free series, and it just kind of folded up. I mean, due to economics and things like that. But we worked with them, and I think at one point, we tried to kind of revive it, but that was an eye-opening experience for me.
Without a doubt.
But there's a lot of local politics involved, and that's right. I think that's the thing. And I know you're in business now. You're doing real estate, flipping houses, things like that.
Yes, I am.
So, I mean, I think part of my experience in dealing at least with municipalities and a lot of, actually, honestly, what's going on with me right now is, I'm sure you deal with this in the real estate world as well, is just the concept of getting something in writing, a contract.
Absolutely.
It's, I think we made a huge mistake when it came to Corona Media Group, just pinning down people and getting firm commitments instead of this kind of loosey-goosey, like, oh yeah, I'll get you $40,000 worth of sponsorship dollars.
Right.
And then we're like, oh, okay, well, we got all this going for us. And then none of that ever materialized. So,
Correct.
So in your house flipping experience, how have you avoided going down those bunny trails and maybe getting those handshake deals and the problems that arise in that current venture?
Well, actually, there still are handshakes, and I believe a handshake is still worth something. But you do have to keep everything in a written contract from the legal standpoint. And anything you write, anything you could write down and scratch on a piece of paper. If you got to grab a Post-it note and I sign it, that's a legal bound contract. So I've learned too that, like you said, having a contract is of the utmost importance, because these guys will take your money and run, man. You'll get a contractor, a roofer, a general contractor, a plumber, what you name it, and these guys will give you a price. They'll come to the house. They'll tell you, okay, I'll do this, this, and this. I need $500 for materials. Hand them the money. 3 days, you're trying to get a hold of them. Nobody answers your phone. Nobody comes back. Then you end up doing a job yourself. So, excuse me. So one of the things I try to do always is have a signed contract, and you build relationships, as you know, with everything. It's all about your perception in how people perceive you in the community that you're working with. Once I screw over a contractor, they're all going to know. Any of the reputable ones are all going to know. And the same goes for me when they work for me. They screw me over. All the people that I deal with, there's hundreds of investors in the area, property owners and people that flip real estate, or even realtors, contractors, landlords. It's kind of a community. Everybody knows each other. So,
yeah, I had a crazy experience. We just had gutters done, and my brother-in-law gave me a number to the Amish, and there's a fairly big Amish presence not too far from here. Guy calls me up. He says, we'll do your gutters as soon as we possibly can, all that kind of stuff. And then I got a call from him, I think it was Monday of this week. And he says, I'm going to be by to do your gutters. I said, okay, well, do you need anything? No. How long is it going to take? 3 hours. Okay. So the guy they did the gutters, 3 hours, handed me a bill. We never had any contract, never any agreement or anything. And there was a part of me that says, you know what? This is refreshing.
Without a doubt.
It's refreshing to be able to get to that point in business where you can do that. And you almost wonder how the Amish can get away with something like that. But I would imagine on some level that they're burned. But that's where I struggle sometimes, like you said. I know we're very like-minded in that an agreement should be an agreement. If you and I make an agreement, we say, hey, man, we're going to do this. We were in bands together. If we made an agreement with a venue that we were going to perform a show, we showed up. We did it. We performed it. If we had an agreement that we're going to, do whatever. And if we agree not to get paid, then, that's on us because we didn't get paid. But
correct.
Again, it still amazes me how quickly, people can manipulate that side of an individual, but I've learned, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that at the end of the day, a contract is not just protecting you, it's protecting the other person. Because if we had an agreement and you forgot what it was,
yep,
and then all of a sudden we don't talk again because we never got anything in writing, I mean, that creates problems as well.
Sure. There's a lot of misunderstandings too. Because as you talk to other people interpret what you say a different way. So-and-so said so-and-so said so-and-so said. Come talk to me. That's how I operate. And I noticed too, another point during the pandemic that we just went through, contractors were slammed, and a lot of them didn't have time to get to you, and they're still busy. And when I build these relationships with these people, I always tell them, when I book you to come do a job, I'm not looking for a deal. I want to pay you to do the job because I know you'll do it right. You give me a deal, that's on you, but don't shortcut my job. because you gave me the discount. And if you can't get to me, tell me. I won't hire you. I'll move down the road. I have a deadline. You have work to do. If you don't have time for me for my deadline, just tell me. And I don't have to worry about it. And that, because then if you don't show up because you can't get there, I'll be there tomorrow, be there tomorrow, be there tomorrow. You don't come, now I got a bad taste in my mouth. And that relationship now is tarnished. I lost a good friend over something very similar. So
yeah, we're in a situation with our bagel business, and we run a small bagel business near Western New York, and we were renting a kitchen for, I don't know, 80 consecutive weeks, and we'd run into some issues because it was a shared space and everything like that. But then this last Friday we showed up, somebody else was there, and then they just, the executive director was out of town. He got back in on Monday, and he was just like, yeah, these are the kinds of things that happen now that the pandemic's over. I can't really control who's going to be there. And I'm like, that's almost where it comes back to this contract thing where, hey, I thought we had an agreement that I bake every Friday because we sell bagels on Saturdays. And so I got into a discussion with another friend of mine about this particular situation. And trust me, I'm getting to the point. They said, well, I hope that all the other experiences that you had with our organization were positive ones. And I'm like, well, they were, but it almost kind of goes back to like a concert. If you go to a concert, maybe the concert is really good, and then they either don't come out for the encore, or they don't, Leonard Skinner doesn't play Freebird. Nobody's going to say, oh, that was a great concert. There's an expectation. But I think like you said, it's so important to end a relationship on a high note, because sure. I think that is almost where more of it is judged than anything else. And I think that's marriage. I think that's business. I think it's everything.
Yeah,
so,
it's the old adage. It takes 20 years to build a reputation, 20 seconds to destroy it.
Yeah, and it's crazy, but I think and the thing with me is that I got it. Things happen and there's mistakes and everything, but the only thing I would have liked was have been, hey man, I screwed up. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
We ran into that with that. I mentioned that tribute band that we work with. They used a bunch of our photos.
Oh yeah.
And I called them on it, and they had a contract that they broke. And honestly, I was just like, hey man, just don't use our work for free and not attribute it to us and everything. And then I got a 18-page email about what an evil human being I was and all the horrible things that we did. And I mended that relationship. I mean, I we're Facebook friends and all that other stuff. And it was funny because when the band actually finally just broke up like 4 or 5 months ago, and they actually mentioned you and I and thanked us and everything for some stuff that we did early on. But you know what? That's the first time. That was what, 10 years, 10, 12 years ago?
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah. And that's the first time they ever thanked us for all the free work we did for them.
Outstanding.
But, oh, well. If you're hearing that fizzing in the background, that's me knocking over my drink. Oh, my goodness.
Outstanding. I'm glad we have some separation here. I didn't get that on me.
So, well, let's talk about some other stuff. Parenting. We're both dads, and I think that people that I like to hang around with and spend any time with. I mean, they're parents, man. They just love their kids, and I love my kids. My kids,
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool.
They're pretty good kids too, actually.
Well, your kids are pretty darn good kids too. So how are things going with your kids, and what's it mean to be a dad to you?
Oh man, what's it mean? Well, I'll tell you, it's one of the jobs you are never ready for. I remember before I had children, I remember telling the guys I worked with, I'm like, I'm gonna wait till I got this in line, then I'm gonna have kids. And all the old timers, they tell you, you're never ready for kids. They're right, because you can never say, okay, I want to have a kid tomorrow. There's not a date. It happens. You have children. And I tell you, it's one of the hardest things in life to do is to, and I don't mean as far as knowing what to do, that it's hard, or how to teach, your child. It's the hardest because that child becomes what you basically are everything that child becomes if you are involved with them from the beginning. I know everybody has their own mind and people change, but your children become what you make them. They basically become you.
Yeah.
And
does it frustrate you? I mean, if you think about it, just how many guys just
walk away.
Yeah, they just don't
get
they
it.
just don't want to be dads. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's difficult. You're never ready for it. It really is just my pet peeve when I look at guys out there who just don't appreciate what it is, and I think they make it difficult to be a dad. Now, your kids are older. I mean, how old are your kids now? They're
My son is 23. He'll be 24 in July, and Allie is 20.
Yeah, so your kids are still your kids. I mean, my kids are 37, 38, well, 38, 33, and 28 or something like that. And it's weird. I mean, you're still their dad, and I think there's definitely a difference in terms of parenting when you get older, but still,
Sure.
you're not going to have a relationship with your kids in their 20s if you weren't their parent
Correct.
in their teens, in their early years and everything like that. But, man, it still just frustrates me to meet guys that just
agree.
don't, I get... This is going to sound terrible. Stop me if it sounds too terrible. I get that marriages fail. I get that relationships fail, but I don't get like the I'm not dad anymore thing. That to
Yeah.
me is just a little bit wacky.
Now, I can see as you get older and you have disagreements and things do happen with children and their parents because, even though I raised JJ, he's his own man, and dealing, and he was, he has Asperger's, so we
Right.
dealt with that. That was challenging. And I remember when we got the diagnosis, it was a little, daunting at first. We didn't know what to expect. And I can go on for hours about what doctors and the shit we dealt with that. But I remember somebody telling me special people have special children. And so you always got to look at things, glass is always half full kind of thing, and it's, I guess this all ties into business and parenting is you never lose. You either learn or you win. And learning is winning. I mean, you're never, as long as you can take something from something and apply it and continue on, what have you lost? Money? Money comes and goes, man. You make it again, I'll make more tomorrow. I'm not a millionaire,
Yeah.
but I don't put everything. Money is not what I live for. It's nice. It makes life easy, but it's not everything. And I think that changes your mindset a little bit too when you start to think, instead of working paycheck to paycheck and, how am I going to get this? How am I going to get that? If you just continue to want to succeed, the money will come and life gets easier. And I know it's, people say, that sounds easy when you're, I don't want to say successful, but when you're on your way, yeah, it does. I struggled, man. I've been down them dark, lonely roads, man. I've been in financial peril, but you just keep plugging along, man. And eventually it all comes together. You just got to change the mindset, and that's what I try with my kids is I'm trying to get them to look at that the same way. I want to get them involved in real estate. I want to get them involved in investing. And I want them to see that when people say, you buy a house for $500,000, how you doing that? What? You just put zeros on the end. It's $5. You bought it for $5. You sell it for 10. Okay. So I bought it for $500,000. I sold it for $1 million. Yeah. There's work to do in between, but they're just zeros.
Yeah.
They're just zeros. And you look at a project for what it is. You're taking something and making something out of it, and you get paid for it, which is cool. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. We were talking about children, and I'm back to talking about business. But children are like a business, and you have to treat them as your own little project.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned about how, like with the kids, you want to instill upon them to do this and do that. I deal with that too, with my kids, and yeah, my kids have all turned out all right. But even on some level, I was a single parent raising a couple of them by myself. And I think when they see the scrappiness where you really got, like you said, financial peril, I think there's a strange value to financial peril.
Absolutely.
Both for the parents and for the kid. Now, I wouldn't want my kids to go through the financial peril that I went
Neither
through
would I.
as adults. But I think as kids on some level, it worked out for him. You know, it's interesting. I interviewed John Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls, and we really hit it off because we're about the same age. But one of the things that he said, I'll never forget. He talked about growing up and being really poor. And he's like, I don't care what ever happens. I never, ever want to be poor again.
It's a mindset.
It sucks. Mm-hmm. It is an absolutely, you know, for all these people that talk about like, oh, you know, poor people got this, or, you know, they get food stamps, or they get all these benefits and blah, blah, blah. I've never known anybody that's poor that likes it. It's just not a great place to be. No. It's awful. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Your kids look at that and they go, you know what? My dad or my mom or whoever, you know, they had to bust their ass to get us what we needed, you know, whether it's a small toy or even dinner on the table. And I think that just makes them a better person on some level.
Sure. They appreciate it. And I remember my daughter said to me one time, we were, when we were shopping for new homes, and she said, well, what's wrong with this one? And it's the house I grew up in. I was there 35 years. And my parents basically, they didn't give it to me, but I assumed their mortgage because they were going through a tough time as well. And at the time, 30 years ago, I assumed their mortgage for them to get back on their feet, which they did, and they're doing quite well. My dad, they're both retired, so. But she said to me, what's wrong with this one? And I said, well, I'd like to get a nicer house. She goes, this keeps us warm and it keeps us dry. Yeah. She goes, it has for my whole life. And she actually did not want to move into the new house when we bought it. It took her a little while to come around. And now actually she's coming back home from Oklahoma right now. And she can't wait to get home because she misses home. But, well, I ran a little late today because flight delays. You could do a show on airlines too if you want. I've got a lot to talk about with airlines. But
I'm trying to keep the show as positive and light as possible. We start talking about I've got plenty of airline stories as well. My gosh, man, I've had some great experiences. My greatest was getting drunk on an airplane with Trevor. But as far as horror stories, yeah, I got plenty of those.
You mentioned your kids, and Trevor, he's the one that turned out, I think, the best. You know, being that he's not a guitar player.
Oh my goodness, yes. So for those out there, see, John is he's a drummer. We were actually in bands together, which maybe this is a nice transition because I definitely want to talk about band dynamics and all that stuff and sort of the funny stories that go along with that. But yeah, Trevor is a drummer. He's still playing out, and I know you still play as a drummer. But just because he's the drummer doesn't make him the best. I don't know how you do it with your kids, but my kids are kind of like, since I'm a real music guy, I sort of do the same with them as I do, like the Billboard charts. Some weeks Trevor's number one, some weeks Thom Jr., some weeks Tim. It depends. It depends on who calls me or who's willing to come over and do some landscaping, something like that.
Well, that's a good rating system.
It is good. And Thom Jr., he's got our granddaughter, and so that one's, all he's got to do is send her over to the house. But she's always number one. I hope you're looking forward to being a grandfather, because trust me, it's an even better experience than being a parent. So, but yeah, let's talk about bands and music and all that kind of stuff. And I know we've dealt with the music industry on a couple of different levels as far as media stuff. Now, you were a photographer for a while. I mean, where are you at in terms of doing music photography? Because last I knew, you weren't doing any of it. I'm
not doing any of it at all. I enjoyed it. Self-taught photographer, and I just something, me, I dig my teeth into something, I dig in and I figure it out and I'll learn it. It becomes a passion. And I did enjoy it, but the thing that drove me nuts was not being the guy on stage.
Interesting.
I wanted to get back on stage. I wanted to be that guy again. And I didn't think I'd miss it as much as I did, because I took about 20 years off of playing. When I got out of the Air Force, met my wife. Well, got together with my wife. I've known her my whole life. We got together and decided to have children, so the drums were put on the back burner. We were worried about a place to live and food on the table and kids to raise. So, as much as I had the passion for photography, it was the passion for playing that ultimately drove me out of my photography. As you know, I did wedding photography and studio photography, and I have a lot of money invested in equipment. And, one of the biggest things, and everything goes back to business. People didn't want to pay. They don't want to pay a photographer. You book a wedding and they want to hire the DJ. They want to have the nice venue and the nice meal. But the thing that will last the longest, that your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will look at for decades to come, are the photos. And people don't want to hire talented photographers and pay them good money to have that lasting memory. And that's a shame.
It is. I think photography is... Writing is the same on some level. I mean, I've written for the newspaper for, I want to say 15 years. And if you want to hear something depressing, I literally get paid the same per column today as I did 15 years ago.
That don't surprise me.
And the thing is, because, as newspapers have really struggled to stay afloat and everything, and I've been times like, hey man, can we increase the rate or something like that? I still enjoy it. I still enjoy the writing. I still enjoy the media aspect of it, which is why I'm doing the podcast and whatnot. But I mean, ultimately my goal here would be to figure out a way to monetize the podcast. I mean, I'm not doing this forever. I mean, if there comes a point where I don't make the money, I'm just, like you said, it's you there's a passion and you love it, but then eventually you just go, but I think music, photography, writing, I mean, all those things, all the arts, it's amazing because it seems like there's one extreme or the other. Either you get people like J.K. Rowling, who makes money hand over fist, or a guy like me that sits there and, pecks away at his computer keyboard trying to put out good content and is lucky to, get enough money to fill their gas tank.
Well, you get paid?
But the photography and music photography, for those of out there that are thinking about going into it, is a complete waste of your time unless you accept it as just being a hobbyist.
Well, I'll tell you, there are some guys and they're talented, and not that I don't want to toot my own horn, not that I wasn't talented, but there are guys that knock down a good living doing it. I just couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't crack the code, and I couldn't get in, I guess. So I don't know. Maybe that was my being naive and not knowing what to do and who to do it with. But I shot all the big names. I've done interviews backstage, and I've done concerts, and I've hung out with these people. You hang out with these people,
yeah.
And it just seems like that. And they're not cheap, but I just think I don't know. I don't know what it is. If I knew, I'd be making money doing it.
Yeah, it's economics 101. I mean, I think this transitions actually very well into the kind of the band discussion, because I know in booking bands and all this other stuff that there's always been that has always been an issue in terms that there's a core group of musicians, bands, whoever, that will play for next to nothing or nothing. And then basically they drive down the cost of the ability for anybody else to really play and make money. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that drives me absolutely crazy. So, for instance, since I know that our mutual friend Gary, who you're in a band with, will never listen to this particular podcast. If he does, it's nothing personal. Maybe we'll just call him Bob instead of calling him Gary, and he'll never. This guy Bob. I'm really talking about Gary though.
Cut, please.
Yeah, edit out. So there's a coffee shop that's down the road from the place that I book music for in Medina. Now we haven't booked for a couple of years because there was a pandemic and everything and whatnot, but a lot of the guys that I would book at this place that I book music for in Medina, I mean, played at this coffee shop. But they do it for this guy because, whatever. He's just a cult of personality dude, and he pays next to nothing. Pays like $50 or whatever. Mm. And so to me, as a guy that's spending somebody else's money booking artists, I look at that group of musicians that have taken that, and I go, well, how can you say to me that you need this amount of money to play at my place, which is literally a block up the road, when you're willing to take this from that guy up the road? But I think it also becomes a cultural thing in a local music scene where, again, if you get venue owners that are like, hey man, we'll just pay the door, and if you don't get enough people, maybe you'll have to pay us to pay for the doorman. And I've heard of situations where you literally have to pay the doorman if there's not enough people that come through the door.
Pay the doorman, pay the sound man, pay the light guy.
So, but the thing is the only reason that they get away with that is because people will do it.
People will do it. Yeah, there's the old exposure. You pay with exposure bucks.
Right.
How many exposure bucks is your rent?
Well, but I'm saying your buddy Gary, for example, our buddy Gary's a good friend. He's a great guy. I mean, I assume he's doing it as a favor. It's, he literally chuck a rock at this guy's place from his house. But I said on a small level, it kind of chafes me that this guy has been able to book all of these musicians that I've paid 3 times the price for to play at our place. And now I'm to the point where I'm kind of reluctant to bring him back because I feel like I got ripped off. Yeah. It'd be like if let's talk about a contractor, for example. If you were working with a contractor that was putting up your gutters and they're charging you $3,000, and then you find out that there's a guy up the street who got the same amount of gutters and he only charged them $500. I mean, how would you feel?
I'd be a little pissed off. But when you mention that kind of goes both ways with venue owners, because they'll want to pay. When I was in the metal band, when I had we would play 4 hours, and we would pack every place we played. Was just, well, not every place, but a lot of times we had great crowds, and they would only want to pay us $400 for the night, $350.
Yeah,
for 5 guys, lights, sound. How am I going to make any money doing that? No, I'm not in it to make money, of course, but it's got to be worth my while. It has to be something. I'm giving up my free time. I'm giving up, and I do enjoy being on stage, but you can't just do it. There's a lot of work involved. You got to lug equipment. You got to lug sound and lights. I mean, that's the sound guy gets his money because he's got to lug his stuff. Why can't you pay the band? But when you're turning over $4,000 at the bar, you can't give the band $600.
Yeah, no, I know that from a long, being in the restaurant industry for a long time, it's really difficult to balance the budget. And this may seem a little bit off the topic, but I don't think it necessarily is. But it's kind of like the debate that's going on in New York State having to do with migrant workers. All right, so the farmers' argument is, and I don't even know why this is controversial. They go, well, we can't pay overtime over a certain amount because if we do, it's going to cost us too much money and our tractors cost more money and all this other stuff. So the rules shouldn't apply to us because we're farmers or whatever. But at the end of the day, everybody has to deal with costs. Everybody has to deal with expenses. If you can afford to hire a band, then you hire the band. And if you can't afford to hire the band and pay the band what they should have been paid, don't hire a band.
I agree.
I don't, I tell you, the guy that I work with now in terms of the venue, when we originally made an agreement, and it was a gentleman's agreement and we're friends and everything. And I said, listen, I'm never going to be associated with a venue that A, pays exposure bucks, or B, underpays the band, because what's going to happen is you're going to make my job more difficult. Because Absolutely. If I go to you, if you say to me, hey, listen, man, it's $500 for my band, and I said to you, all right, well, that's below our budget, and I don't dicker with you, I think you're going to have more respect for me than if I go, oh man, can you do it for $150 and we'll throw in some free drinks?
Yeah, we get that too.
You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, we got to be honest. And honestly, I'm to the point now where I don't have problems booking people. A, they know we pay. They know we pay what we can pay, that we're not gypping them. And they also know that if we have a great night, the owner's going to throw them some extra money.
And that's golden.
That's all it is.
When you get an owner that takes care of you, like we play in Alcott, and that place loves us, and they take care of us. They have a good night. They'll pay us, plus they'll feed us. They'll give us drinks, and they'll even ask us to play extra. They'll give us extra money to play over. So that's the kind of place when they call and say, hey, can you play such and such date? Yeah, we'll be there. You got it. Absolutely. Yeah. And we enjoy playing there. It's a great venue. It's an old fire hall. It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat in there. Yeah, you got to come out and check that one out.
I definitely will. I tell you, I don't know. It's funny. I kind of miss playing, but I don't miss playing because, as you and I both know, I'm not a fan of rehearsals. Like, I just don't like to rehearse. I hate them.
Another thing you got in common with Gary.
I've got I've rehearsed with Gary. We've done, we've prepped for gigs together. I'm not a fan of doing a lot of rehearsing. I like the live setting and everything. I like the excitement and everything, but man, I just said, I hate all the extraneous BS, like I said, dealing with bar owners and all that other stuff. And, and then even just, even just the dynamics within the band. I mean, we had a situation, I think the last band that we were in, that the guitarist just flaked out on us for, I don't even remember what the heck he was all
You were the
ticked off
guitarist.
about. No, Norm. What? Oh, wait. Norm was the bass player. Sorry. Sorry to all you guitarists out there. Not that guitarists don't flake out, but
Damn thin stringers.
yeah. No, I mean, he did just like, to me, it was like, I don't even remember. You know, this is the way I look at things. If you have a disagreement with somebody to the point where you either stop working together or stop speaking, okay, and you can't remember what it was about, then clearly it wasn't.
It wasn't too damn important.
I mean, like, I look back and I go, what the heck was it?
What happened?
I don't even I mean, I honestly don't even remember.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I do not know what the issue was. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. He got, well, we actually, because I remember we had cycled through a bunch of guitarists too, because there was that one guy, we played a show where he just sat and wouldn't look at the crowd.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Who was that? He would never stand.
He not only refused to stand while he played guitar, he refused to look at the audience while he played guitar.
He had to turn sideways.
Yeah, he had to turn sideways and like sit in a chair and look away. And you know what was weird about that was that he was a really like an exceptional guitarist.
He was
like,
outstanding.
He was one of those guys whose guitar talent was just so incredible. But then you're like, man, you know, I almost think you could have worked it in as a shtick, but you know, I don't know. I think I'm sure you're the same way in terms of when you're playing. I mean, you just love the dynamics of the audience, but you also sort of have to have some dynamics on stage together as well. And I mean, we know about all these bands where the bandmates hate each other off stage, but man, something happens magical on stage.
It's chemistry. And there's people like you said about, I can't think of his name, and he sat and played guitar. You could absolutely love his playing and love to play with him, but couldn't stand him off stage. And I can understand how that works on a professional level. We had a guitar player in our metal cover band. He's a phenomenal musician, great guitar player, lead player. The show that you came to, he was our lead player at the time. Outstanding. Oh, douchebag. I will never. I don't think I'll ever speak to him again. And I almost swallowed my pride to put that metal band back together. And I actually thought about contacting him just to, even for one show, just to play with them guys again. You know, just to play that again, just to relive that. I mean, we packed places, and that band was a lot of energy, and it was a lot of fun. But hey, I'm jamming with my cousin now, and we're playing some Beatles and some, there may even be some Rundgren in there someday, and a lot of classic rock stuff. It's fun. People dance, you know, it's a different crowd.
Yeah, I've always found that, like, I was in a band with this guy, and he was like, oh my God, he was one of those dudes that absolutely demanded that every single song sound exactly like the record.
No.
And so and really this is where my absolute hatred of rehearsing comes from, because he just made it such a miserable experience. And I've always believed that in terms of like a bar band, and I don't use the term bar band in a derogatory sense. I think a bar band is one of the most important, and in some ways, one of the most difficult things to really pull off.
You're a living jukebox.
Well, but you know, like if I hear we mentioned Freebird, that's probably not a great bar song, but we'll say Mustang Sally, okay? You know, I used to go through this when I was a wedding DJ. You know, I had a guy come up to me once and say his wife didn't want to hear Chicken Dance and Macarena and all those other things. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, I get it. I don't want to have any more men raining down. I don't want to, you know, do the YMCA. I don't want to deal with any
Shuffle.
of that nonsense. Like, I hate it as much as you do, because I got to hear it every freaking weekend, sometimes Fridays and Saturdays.
Right.
But you know what? People love it.
Absolutely.
So if somebody wants to hear Mustang Sally and you know the three chords, just shut up and play the damn song. Does it have to sound exactly like the record? Nope. It does not. It just has to not sound like you guys are so drunk that you don't care. That's all. But, you know, as I said, I love the dynamics of playing on stage and all that other stuff. But, man, I've just it's always been, there's always just people in it that can ruin it for you. It sounds like you had a similar experience with with the guitarist,
Yeah. Well, not for nothing. I think you found something here that you're good at. I mean, you're good at talking. We all know that.
No, thanks.
So putting a mic in your face and putting you in a pod to cast, wherever that term comes from, is that like a Mork and Mindy reference? A podcast?
You really caught me with a question that I do not have. I mean, you totally turned this around on me.
I was on my way here, and I'm like, I'm going to go cast in a pod.
This room we're in. It isn't like a giant room, but it's certainly a little bit more than a pod.
It's a Rundgren pod.
Yeah. Yeah, for those of you that can't see, since we are not on video,
Thank God.
There's about 18 different pieces of Todd Rundgren stuff on the wall, and my granddaughter actually can pick them out now. And one day she came in, she goes, "There's Todd Rundgren everywhere." This was a 3-year-old who realized that.
I'm looking around. That was a fun show.
Oh yeah, Sugarland. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That she photographs outstanding.
Yeah.
That was a great show.
Yeah, but it's well, I appreciate you mentioned that about the podcast. It's something I when I was a kid, I always wanted to. It's like we talk about chasing our dreams. I mean, you said, "Hey, I got to a point where it was like the thing that I really missed about being at concerts was being on stage, not being the photographer." And I get it. And like I'm a teacher and I do some different things. I've had different careers and different career paths or anything, but yeah, I think the thing that I most enjoy is talking to people. And
Sure.
on some level, even if it's just me in my pod, I'm still talking to somebody.
Correct.
So I don't know. Hopefully this turns into something better than your guitarist of Eye for an Eye or our guy. Can you imagine if I was like a podcaster who, actually podcasting, you don't actually have to look at people
or have anybody here.
I could have just sat and turned sideways and podcast and not worry about what people think. But
face the corner. You don't even need anybody here. You can do it all by yourself.
God, those were good old days. Any other? I guess one other. Now, when you and I played, it was usually with my son, which I think is just so much fun playing in a band with your kids. I mean, that with those situations, you gotta take them whenever you can. I've never been in a long-term band with my child again because I want him to continue to speak to me, and I think if there's anything that could destroy a family relationship, it's being in a band. I mean, look at all these brothers that don't talk to each other anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you tune in for advice, you just got...
Yeah. Play with your kids on occasion. Do it for a short period of time.
Mustang Sally, as long as you both know it.
As long as you both know it. Make sure your guitarist can look forward and stand. Well, they don't necessarily have to stand, but at least, look at the audience when they're playing.
Even if you got to put a bright light in their face so they don't have to actually see somebody, just tell them look that way. Yeah.
So have you ever performed in a band that had a worse name than our famous band name, Disco Pants and Haircuts?
No, I actually love that name, though. That's something that should have taken off. That's a great line. I bet you a lot of people listening don't even know what the hell that is. Yes,
it's a line from the Blues Brothers, and we were I think we only did one show under that name. I can't remember. Like didn't we open for somebody or something? What was the deal with that? Because we were just a 3-piece at the time.
That was the Rumors show.
Oh no! Because when we did Rumors, we were Tuesday's Gun, which was the play on Tuesday's Gone. That was Tuesday's Gun, because I went out to do the St. Patrick's Day run in the morning, and I was 3 sheets to the wind. And she reminded me of that when she wrote the angry email. She's like, "And you were all drunk at our show in Medina, New York." And I'm like, "It was St. Patrick's Day." Because I actually remember when they said to us, they go, "Well, we don't have an opening act." I'm like, "Listen, I'll open for you, but I'm not going to lie. I'm an Irish guy. It's St. Patrick's Day, so I'm probably going to be a little bit drunk." And
that's racist.
And I was. It's not racist.
How come I can't use that? I'm just a drunk. You're Irish. That's not fair.
We always, the great thing is we always used to pick on each other's heritage, and then we John and I eventually came up with a drink. Remember that?
Oh, yes, I do.
What did we call it?
The Irish Godfather.
The Irish Godfather.
However, there actually is a drink called the Irish Godfather.
What?
Yes.
So what you're telling me is that our failure to copyright that particular drink...
Oh, no. I went out after we had that drink at the bar, and that was after one of the Lockport concerts. We went to Seamus,
Yeah, and there was some guy like from some band who had lost his wallet, right? Was that when it happened?
Yes.
Okay, and I wish I could remember the band because they're actually pretty famous now.
It was the that was the Young Kids. That was Lock 34. That was a different night.
No, this was
Wasn't
down
it?
in the basement for sure. It was the guy that lost his wallet.
This wasn't the basement. Seamus was the restaurant that we sat at the bar at a thunderstorm.
Oh, okay. Now I know what you're talking about. Everyone else listening is going, what the heck?
Yeah, they have
Use
no idea
Google
what it-
Maps,
yeah,
folks. Use
Seamus.
Google Maps.
Look Seamus up in Lockport.
It's Irish bar.
Yeah,
that's all. If it's anything or Seamus, it's or Ryan's, whatever. But go ahead.
Anyway, we're sitting at the bar, and we were trying to think of something to drink, and I said, let's mix Di Serono and Jameson. And the bartender says, oh, how do you want? I said, just mix them 50-50. Well, she mixed them, and the Irish Godfather was, we thought, born.
Yeah.
However, I was sitting at my parents' house the one night, and I told my brother, so I'm going to run to the liquor store. I said, he brought some cigars, and I said, I'm going to run to the liquor store, and I'm going to get some Jameson and some Di Serono. We're going to have some Irish Godfathers. He's like, what the hell is that? I said, you'll see. So I grabbed the Di Serono. It came in a little gift pack. Had a couple glasses, the ones they sucker you into by the glasses. Inside it was a cocktail book. In that cocktail book was the Irish Godfather.
Wow.
That was literally like months after, not even, it was maybe 2 months after. So
And what was in it?
2 parts Di Serono, 1 part Jameson. Ours was 50-50. They did 2 and 1.
Man.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
It's just a coincidence, I guess. But
Or maybe they just stole it from us. I think
they stole it. I'm going to go with they stole it. I say we sue them.
We stole.
Sue them for punitive damages.
Well, you know what? We will wrap up on that because we're at about the 47-minute mark, and I know we'll definitely have to hang. We'll hang for a while after we get done recording the episode. But this has been a lot of fun. We got a couple of laps, and we definitely have to do it again. And you'll have to tell the world now that they have to come to the pod.
The pod to cast.
And by next episode, everyone out there listening, I'm going to find out the origins of the word podcast because I honestly don't know.
I'm going to bet that there's somebody listening going, what a dumbass.
Yeah.
You don't know what podcast means?
They're going to be like, yeah, it's like a person of display. I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be something goofy like that, but whatever. Right. But and again, everybody out there, thanks so much for listening. We're actually approaching about the 400 download per month number, which is good. That's 13, 14 off. So if you know any friends, or even if you want to just put it on and not actually listen to it, they used to, I worked at a place once.
They would farm?
Their contract, yeah, they would literally just sit there and watch YouTube videos all day and not actually watch
stream
them
farm.
just so they could get it. So if you know any stream farms that are reasonable, let me know. But hopefully you're real people out there. But again, John, thanks for joining me on the Bagel.
Thanks for having me.
The Bagel Logic Podcast. And folks, we will see you next time.